Hello, Easton, and welcome to the Rabbi's Roundtable. I'm Rabbi Peter Hyman, Rabbi at Temple B'nai Israel, and we are glad that you could join us for another session of the Rabbi's Roundtable. And I'm really delighted. This morning, we have as our guest the Maryland State Comptroller, a wonderful leader, an insightful leader, Peter Franchot. And Mr. Comptroller, welcome to the Rabbi's Roundtable. Glad you're back.
No, I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for your advocacy on behalf of people who are disadvantaged and vulnerable. Without your leadership in the Easton Talbot County area, we would be a lot poorer state. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about just basic human compassion and empathy for each other. So thank you for what you and your colleagues represent. I think I spoke to the Association of Clergy and Laity.
Yes, you did, tackle.
And, they're a terrific group. Please pass all their my best wishes along. Happy to take any questions that you have.
I will. Thank you so much. Listen, why don't, if you want to make any comments about last night or the debate or any insightful remarks, we can start there, and then we can talk about the Bureau of Revenue estimates and all that sort of thing. And then we can do other locally if you'd like.
Sure. I give out my cell phone often at the beginning of talks like this. If anybody needs to leave a voicemail or a text message for me, I'm a statewide elected official. The number is 301 area code 332-1961. I also apologize to people because the federal government has clearly dropped the ball on the coronavirus. It has not been crushed or corralled in any way, frankly. So we're having to suffer the economic consequences along with the public health crisis. You mentioned last night's debate. My favorite lawn sign is one on my neighbor's yard that in big red, white, and blue letters says 2020, any functioning adult. Because last night was not a victory for democracy. It was some kind of a food fight or that cage fight stuff that they talk about on TV. It was embarrassing to me as a citizen of the country to have that kind of demonstration of uncivility and whatever. So I was very disappointed in the debate. I'm quite optimistic about the elections righting the ship. Number one, I'm quite optimistic that there will be a second federal stimulus because the first one worked marvelously well, and I'm happy to talk about that.
Please elaborate on that. People will want to know about that for sure.
Yeah, when that was first proposed, I'm pretty tight with the dollar, so as the comptroller of the state, so I kind of arched an eyebrow at the amount of money. It's $2.2 trillion in the first CARES federal relief plan. Just FYI for your listeners, Rabbi, $2.2 trillion bills laid end to end would, if you started at Earth, would go all the way through space to the sun, all the way around the sun, and all the way back to the Earth. That's how much $2.2 trillion bills laid end to end would be. So it's a huge amount of money. It proved to be enormously successful. And yesterday in the revenue estimates, we indicated that there were billions of dollars of withholding income that we did not expect that came to the state treasury. The problem there is, yes, the first stimulus worked. We wrote the revenues up by $1 billion to $2 billion in the fiscal year we're in and the fiscal year we're about to enter into, not about to, but going to enter into next year. That's good news, but it's all temporary because if the stimulus has stopped, it's over. The unemployment assistance has stopped, it's over. If we don't get a second stimulus from the Congress, we're going to be in a world of hurt as far as the state's economy. That we will know in December at the revenue estimates. And the other thing that we have our fingers and toes crossed on is we hope that the virus does not have a second wave in the flu season, January and February. If that does occur, or if there is no second stimulus, we're in for a long, cold, hard winter where we literally don't have a winter coat. Let me stop there and see if any of that makes sense to you.
Well, it does, and it's worrisome. It's troublesome, without question. I worry about businesses, even locally here in Easton and in Talbot County, that have been really impacted by all of this. And the thought of it having a second wave and continuing is even more debilitating.
I have advocated in the interim, while people are sitting around understandably concerned about small businesses, Rabbi, and thank you for mentioning that. We happen to have a positive fund balance, once again, thanks to the stimulus plan, at the end of the last fiscal year, June 30th. That money, $585.8 million, is sitting in a state checking account right now, gathering mold. I'm recommending strongly to the governor and the legislative leaders that they take it out and immediately use it in a much smaller version of what the feds did, as far as a state relief plan for small businesses. It means
Sorry, go ahead.
a $10,000 check or a $15,000 check to a Main Street business is not going to save them, in quotation marks, but
Right.
It's an expression from the state of Maryland that if you can survive until February or March of next year, please do. We want you to. We don't want you to go out of business.
Oh, for sure. And how would a small business owner access those funds?
Well, I've said somewhat glibly to Governor Hogan, he and I should take the big ledger, not the little one, the big one off the dusty shelf, open it up and walk down the streets of Easton. And it's pretty clear who has not benefited from the federal relief plan. And obviously the local Talbot County and Easton development folks know exactly what I'm talking about. They will be able to provide a targeted group, but I don't envision this as some kind of application program where you have to have a good credit rating and all that bureaucratic stuff. I see this as $585 million going immediately into the bank accounts of deserving small businesses. It's not a panacea. It's not enough money. But if they could do a federal stimulus sometime, I guess they're not going to do it immediately, this state stimulus could staunch the bleeding for the next 3 to 4 weeks. And that's the important issue right now. We do not want to lose what are very good assets for the state, which are these wonderful restaurants and hospitality centers and other gift shops and things from folks that have been hanging on by their fingernails. You give them a $10,000 or $15,000 no questions asked check that they don't have to pay back. And conceivably, it can be a lifeline to get them from here to there. Once we get to there, which is, February, March of next year, if we have a medical solution, and that's a big if, we can begin to reopen even more quickly the economy. But obviously, public health is first, second, and third priority.
Yeah, for sure. Do you see any movement, maybe even speeding this up at all?
Yes, this is something that is, because of the emergency situation, the governor has enormous powers. So if folks that are listening want to send a nice letter, I respect Governor Hogan. I'm not into this partisan mode of criticizing people.
Good.
So if you write and say, it would be really helpful to small businesses since the federal program has been held up, you don't have to invade the rainy day fund, which I'm also in favor of, because my goodness, if it's not raining now, when would it ever be described as raining?
Kidding.
But given that there's this other found money that is also one-time only money, and it should be, in my opinion, allocated immediately, because the governor could do it very quickly. That's the key. And the model, of course, is the success of the federal stimulus, which is undeniable based on the revenue estimates, but also temporary. And we keep saying to folks, there's a tornado up there. We see the tornado. We know it's going to land somewhere in Maryland. We don't know where or when. And that is the case. So I hope everybody doesn't misread the revenue estimates to think that we're out of the woods here. We're not.
Okay. Well, we'll pay attention, and hopefully this will move through quickly, and we can make an impact through your leadership and through the governor. And it's certainly serious. There's no question about it. We can feel it as we walk down the streets right now. It's really.
I apologize to people everywhere because it didn't have to be this way.
No.
And, I just feel badly because,
Yeah.
We engaged at the federal level in a lot of negligence and a lot of subterfuge and a lot of misinformation and disinformation. This is a devastating virus. It's brand new. That's why it affects old people so seriously because, our Rolodexes are full. We've got all sorts of antiviral exposure, immunizations and stuff. So our immune system, Rolodex, is kind of full. The reason kids apparently are able to fight off the coronavirus is because they have these different immune systems that haven't been as aged as older people. But now everybody seems to be getting it, 20-year-olds, et cetera. And I just want to importune people to not mess with the coronavirus. I have 4 or 5 friends that have had it, tested positive. They said they had mild or moderate cases. Thank goodness. They still found it very uncomfortable. But to a person, they claimed they were terrified when they got the diagnosis because they said, gosh, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to be one of the few that really gets seriously injured or killed? And it's a brand new virus, and we just need to treat it differently than we normally do.
Absolutely. And interestingly enough, I was speaking to my relatives. I have cousins in London, and they were equally upset and concerned and frightened about all of this. It's global. It is absolutely global.
Yeah, well, there is a certain similarity between the Prime Minister of England and the President of the United States, and it's not favorable, of course.
Yeah.
But I'll put that aside because
yes.
it just gets in the way right now.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I was thinking about all of this is that the truth of the matter is what this teaches us still is that we are susceptible to the 1,000 natural shocks and heartaches that flesh is heir to. And that who would have thought in the 21st century in the United States or in Great Britain, we would have been brought to a standstill by a virus. But it really does show that we're not the big kids in the sandbox that we think we are. So for your leadership and for your insight, we're appreciative, and we need to pay attention without question. Let me move to another topic. As you said, you spoke to TACL, the Talbot Association of Clergy and Laity, and it was a very good and effective meeting. And you spoke about broadband and all those issues. Would you elaborate a little more on that and tell us where we are? And I know there are people that would really like that. So.
Well, I travel all over the state. I've been comptroller for 14 years, Rabbi, and I've traveled almost 1 million miles by car. I know I'm driven, so don't feel too badly for me, but I know where all the potholes are, that's for sure. And so this broadband is something I'm intimately aware of. For example, cell phone coverage in Western Maryland and the Eastern Shore has these huge dead spots in it that I travel through. Yeah. And so I'm aware of that. I'm also aware of the digital divide where there's not internet access. And we have essentially, as a state, tried to deal with that piecemeal and kind of said, well, Southern Maryland and the shore and parts of Western Maryland are special cases, and we just need to focus attention on them. No, that's not the issue right now. We have to obviously understand that the pandemic and remote learning and remote working has exacerbated and made glaringly obvious the digital divide, and it's unacceptable. Here's what we're going to do if I'm ever lucky enough to be governor. We're going to take not a piecemeal approach, we're going to take a whole cloth approach, and we're going to make the state of Maryland the most advanced state as far as high-speed digital technology in the country. And we're going to do it through something that is done by the legislature, which is whole cloth. It's going to be totally inclusive. It's going to include all statutory, regulatory, local, state. Everything's going to be enclosed in one package. And we're going to demand that all of our citizens, be they in vulnerable urban areas or vulnerable rural areas, or even those that have adequate internet coverage now, it's all going to be upgraded through a Marshall Plan. Why is that important? It's important not just to the folks that now have to drive 10 or 15 miles to park in a parking lot outside of school to find a hotspot to do their remote schooling for their kids. It's not just that. It's the economy of the future is going to be different from what it is now. It's going to be much more digital, and the state of Maryland needs to make itself digital friendly to folks all around the country and to small businesses around the country, so we can recruit them to come to Maryland and live in our great state and take advantage of our technology. So that's a big item. It's the problem to date has been great intentions, but not very much collective willpower and collaborative attention to the issue. This is good for the economy of the state. It's good for everybody. It's going to happen because I don't know whether it's 5G or 10G or whatever it is, but we are going to launch a collective effort at all levels of government, state, county, and municipal, along with Verizon and Comcast, to do this together. And I promise you that problem will be fixed. If I'm not comptroller, if I'm not governor, I hope it gets fixed, but I'm afraid it might have not the comprehensive solution that I'm talking about.
Well, I certainly know that now, given all this bizarre reality we find ourselves in, no one, I don't think, was really prepared to do homeschooling and virtual classrooms. I may have told you, we've been doing virtual services, not only here at B'nai Israel, but also I know at Saints Peter and Paul and several of the other churches in the area. All our services are basically live streaming. And while one or two folk may come to the sanctuary, very few people are, and it has created a whole different awareness of the necessity for being technologically up to speed, so to speak. So thank you for that. And
I agree. And let me just add in, everything's going to change after the pandemic. None of it's going back to normal.
Yeah. There's
doctor's visits are going to be virtual. Your counseling sessions and your social work, which is so important and so helpful, a lot of it's going to be virtual. So yes, it cries out for filling in the digital divide and making sure everybody has access. But I also emphasize it's got to be the newest cutting edge of technology. It can't be, we can't go back to kind of where we were. I'm very optimistic for the future because I think it's going to be a better future.
I tend to think you're right about that. Yes, I agree with that.
So I'm not doom and gloom about that, but it's going to be stormy for the next couple of years, and I urge everybody to be patient because the virus is devastatingly bad, put it that way.
Yeah, and as we know, change is always disruptive, but we will do what we need to do to regain the equilibrium that we know and enjoy, and it will be different. But and again, thank you for your leadership on this. It's really important. I know that you saw the letter in the Star Democrat with regard to the statue on the courthouse lawn in Easton. Any thoughts, any comments, any reflections on that you may want to share?
Is this the Talbot Boy statue? Is that what you're referring to,
Yes,
Rabbi?
sir.
Yeah, no, I'm
Yes,
opposed.
sir.
I'm opposed to having that on a courthouse step. It's obviously an expression from 1916 or whatever from folks that wanted to give the message to African American and minority. Frankly, at that point, it was women also, because the suffragists had not yet gotten the vote for women. But it was a message basically from white men saying, you're not going to get fair justice here at the courthouse. I want it removed immediately, along with the base. I would like to see the statue melted down into doorknobs. I think it's an expression of Jim Crow and hostility to folks that are tremendous citizens back then and currently in the state of Maryland. I think it's a huge mistake to treat it as some kind of historic artifice. And if it's still around, if I'm ever lucky enough to be governor, I hope I can come down there personally with a sledgehammer, because it is bad. It's bad for us to have that right in the public kind of justice building of the county. So whatever, I'm obviously going to let the local folks, everybody can put in their opinion. That's my opinion, because, where I come from, everybody needs to be treated with justice. And how can you have a Confederate statue outside the county courthouse and expect people not to be affected? And where's our racial sensitivity, by the way? I mean, the comments that have been uttered by people just are stunning to me. They're
frightening. Some of them are frightening.
So anyway, I hope it gets removed sooner rather than later. But if it's still around, if I'm ever lucky enough to be governor, guaranteed it's coming down. Well,
I'm glad to hear that, actually. Thank you. Mr. Comptroller, we have reached our time limit. They're going to kick me off at MCTV anyway, but I want to thank you for your time, for your insight, and for your willingness to share your thoughts about the really pressing issues that we are confronting locally and statewide, and how we're going to try to deal and manage with these issues. I appreciate your time very, very much. Thanks for being on the Rabbi's Roundtable. You'll be back.
Yes, and I just want to say very briefly, I hope everybody exercises compassion and empathy and sensitivity for people. Everybody's on edge. When someone gives me an extended middle finger when I'm driving for something that I may or may not have done, I always blow them a kiss back because I know they don't mean it. And so I urge everybody to appeal to your better angels and make sure we realize that other folks need to be treated with sensitivity.
Great advice, and I couldn't agree more. And again, thank you for taking the time and being with us on the Rabbi's Roundtable.
All the best, Rabbi. No, I just want to say my best wishes to your listeners.
Thank you. Likewise. Thanks, Mr. Comptroller. And Easton, we will see you next time on the Rabbi's Roundtable.